Alright you guys, welcome back into Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 247. Last time we left off, the boys tried to gang up against Sukuna, but things didn't exactly turn out too well. Ino, despite having Nanami's blade, got kicked through a couple of buildings, Kusakabe got hit with dismantles and thrown around, Choso got double-fisted, and then Sukuna just straight up ran past Yuji. Things weren't exactly looking too good. But thankfully, we ended off last week's chapter with Higuruma unlocking domain amplification. And that is what we pick up in this week's chapter. Sukuna kicks things off by highly praising how Higuruma manipulates his curse technique, saying that he's on the same level as he himself. Which is crazy when you really think about it, since Higuruma just became a sorcerer just 2 months ago. Like, imagine what would happen if you put this man in a hyperbolic time chamber, right? He would walk out as a freaking monster. So after Sukuna sings Higuruma's praises, he ends up cutting apart the floor and rushes in to attack him. But thankfully, Yuji from last chapter finally just caught up, and he ends up defending Higuruma from behind. Unfortunately for Yuji though, Sukuna is just too damn fast, and he ends up just grabbing him like this, right? He grabs his arm and then he grabs Yuji's ribs. And what happens next will shock you, but Sukuna uses cleave. I lied, it's actually not that shocking since this is pretty much what he always uses. But what's crazy is that if you look at where Yuji was cleaved and you go to the end of the chapter, there's a lot of debate on whether or not Yuji is actually missing a part of his body, or if he managed to heal it up. Or a hidden third option would be that Sukuna only cleaved Yuji's clothes off. Personally, I like the notion that Yuji is just straight up missing a part of his torso, and that is what we're seeing in the final panel. But yeah, I would love to hear all of your opinions on this. So after Yuji gets cleaved in this chapter, Sukuna disses him yet again, which I always find a little bit interesting. So he gets cleaved, and Sukuna says, "Listen up, brat, you're dull. I have no interest in you." And in other translations, I've actually seen him say that Yuji is just straight up boring, which I just find fascinating. Whenever Sukuna just disses Yuji, it always feels kind of forced, right? Because he says he's boring and he's dull here, but in no way does he actually mean that. A couple chapters ago, when Yuji threw a punch and it kind of shook Sukuna's body a little bit, Sukuna was like, whoa, like this power, what's going on with this? And then not to mention, one of the major plot point of the series is that Yuji is one of the few people in the world that could actually, control Sukuna to a certain extent in the beginning. So it's like, no way is Yuji dull and boring. It feels like Sukuna is trying to dismiss Yuji for some reason, or at least that's how I interpret it. Oh yeah, and not to mention, but Sukuna has witnessed Yuji's growth, right? He saw the black flashes. He saw Yuji overcome adversity time and time again. It's like, I don't know if he's the most boring person out here, right? Well, I have no interest in Yuji whatsoever, especially when Sukuna knows, or at least should know, that Yuji is like the love child of Kenjaku. Like, no. There's something here. There's got to be a reason why Sukuna is so dismissive of Yuji in particular. But that right there is a mystery for a different day, because today's chapter focuses pretty much on the Higuruma and Sukuna fight. So, Higuruma tries to stab Sukuna with his executioner's sword to no avail. He avoids all of the up-close stabs and he creates distance for himself where he uses a Big Daddy dismantle and cuts the building they're standing on in half. And the building, mind you, isn't the only thing that got cut, because when we go back to Higuruma, it turns out that Sukuna cut his arm off. And what does this man say? He says, "Heal up." Show me that you can heal. Weirdly enough, but reading this part of the chapter kind of made me smile, because it seemed like Sukuna was more or less a Higuruma fanboy, right? He was like, oh, come on, reverse curse technique, of course you can do it. And guess what? He does it! Higuruma joins the greats in the verse of JJK and actually whips out reverse curse technique on the spot. Last week, this man whipped out domain amplification. This week, he whips out reverse curse technique. And it's not like he's healing a small wound, right? It's not a little boo-boo on the stomach. This guy actually regrows his arm in the span of a couple of pages. The narrator last week was not joking when they called him a straight-up prodigy. So, before he goes in and tries to hit Sukuna once more with the executioner's blade, there is an opening that is created by piercing blood. And boy, oh boy, have I seen some debates about this one. So, we don't see who actually shoots piercing blood at Sukuna. a lot of people are saying that it could be Yuji, right? We know that Yuji was training with Choso, he was training with Noritoshi Kamo, so maybe Yuji knows how to use piercing blood now. It would make a lot of sense, right? You know, he's brothers with Choso, maybe he even knows Wing King, for all we know. Maybe his blood is poisonous. There's a lot of things that could come out of Yuji training with Choso and Kamo. But here's the thing. We don't actually see Yuji shoot out piercing blood. This could very well be Choso, but the reason why not a lot of people like the Choso route is because last chapter, Choso got double-fisted, right? The man has 2 gaping holes in his body. If he's alive, that would be a miracle. If he came back this soon, it would be a miracle. So that is why people are leaning towards this piercing blood coming from Yuji, but I just feel like, personally, that is such... maybe not like the biggest moment in this chapter, but I would like to think it would be a big moment if Yuji used piercing blood for the first time. I don't feel like that's something that would just simply get off-screened. So I'm kind of torn on this one. I want to say it's Choso, just based on the fact that we don't see Yuji do it, but honestly, it could go either way, because even if it isn't Choso, Yuji having piercing blood just makes a lot of sense. So thanks to the opening that Yuji or Choso created, Higuruma goes in and he finally does it, right? He finally stabs Sukuna's hand. And apparently, or at least from the way I'm reading this, you don't have to stab the person directly in the torso. Even if you hit their hand or nick them with the executioner's blade, they will die. Unfortunately for Higuruma though, Sukuna ended up dismembering his hand before it was pierced. I've seen some debates out there where the main topic is whether or not Sukuna would actually get killed if stabbed by the executioner's sword, and I feel like this is confirmation that he would get killed if he was stabbed. Mainly because there would be no reason to, you know, go out of your way and cut off your hand if it wouldn't have been detrimental in the first place. So I do take this as confirmation that this is indeed a sure kill ability. Something really cool about this panel where, you know, he's holding up Sukuna's hand with the sword is that you can actually see Higuruma using reverse curse technique on his left hand as well. So it's slowly like coming back together through the steam. Oh yeah, I kind of skipped over it, but Sukuna actually cut off both of Higuruma's arms. He cut off the first one when he cut the building, and then shortly afterwards he cut off the second one. The reason why I think Higuruma is using reverse curse technique on his other arm and trying to regain it while fighting Sukuna here is because you can see like steam flowing out of it, and when you look at the panel where he gets back his first arm, you see the same steam coming out of that arm too. So I'm just taking a leap of faith here, saying that Higuruma has almost mastered reverse curse technique in the span of a single chapter. So once we learned that Higuruma's attack has indeed failed, he ends up tossing his sword over to Yuji while he is being cleaved to death. Higuruma's final moments in this chapter reminds Yuji of Nanami and how the rest is up to him, how he has to finish this fight. And that is what Yuji goes in to do. He grabs the executioner's blade and he tries to stab Sukuna from behind. It looks like it's even touching him. But we know how this goes, right? Until we see the hit, anything's possible, especially when you're Sukuna, who just straight up has plot armor. Honestly, I would not be surprised if come next chapter, Sukuna somehow, some way evades this attack, despite it being point blank, despite it being Yuji in rage mode, despite it coming from behind. This man is going to evade it somehow, because straight up, it is just never that easy. So, with that being said, I would love to hear what you guys think about this chapter. Do you think Higuruma is still alive? Yes or no? Because in this chapter, while he did get hit with a lot of cleaves point blank, I have faith that he can still reverse curse technique himself out of it. And you know, until we see a body cut into 1,000 different pieces, I want to say he's alive. But then again, we didn't see Kashimo's body and that guy's dead. So, you know, you never know. You never know. But yeah, I would love to hear what you guys think about this. Do you think this attack will work? What do you think about Higuruma's last stand? And most importantly, who do you think shot piercing blood? I would love to hear all of your guys' opinions down below. And I'll catch you guys on the next chapter of JJK. My name is Sai, and I'm signing out.